Welcome back to Control Alt Dev. I'm your host, Paul Rhodes. Regular listeners will notice that I'm flying solo today. Sean is unfortunately still unavailable and he's battling quite a few things from bugs to homes to everything else. So we wish him all the best and hopefully he'll be back next week. As regular listeners will know, episode 16 last week, Sean was off and we brought in Kurt, one of the developers from my development team. And we did a massive 90-minute deep dive into how we actually build like AI automations from the trenches. And if you haven't listened to episode 16, go back and check it out. It's definitely worth a listen. But today I want to do the exact opposite, really. I want to give you a short, sharp 20-minute masterclass. It's all about the trust gap and overcoming the fear of missing out and finding that very first quick win in your business. We're going to cover a fascinating story coming out of Spotify, and we're going to look at how a landscaping business should actually view AI in 2026 as well. And we'll wrap up with a quick fire look at the week's news. So as a bit of a curveball, because it's just me, this is a very, very odd experience for me sat here. I've just completed a run. I am beetroot coloured faced. I am very uncomfortable in terms of just talking continuously, but I'm hoping that I'll be able to give you some real value. I thought we could start with a bit of housekeeping. For instance, why did me and Sean start this podcast? It was just we could see the speed of change and we could see the relentless technological advancements, but also the ability for everybody to access this technology. I think that's the tipping point. Is I've mentioned a lot, I think, in podcasts about the art of the possible now. And there really is a unique opportunity in time where if you think it, you can create it, which is unparalleled. So we wanted to basically get together, have an honest discussion about, what's happening in the industry, where we see it's going. So a bit of insight from us, but then also personal reflections on, what does that mean to job satisfaction? What does that mean to our own service offerings? But the one rule that I wanted to instill between me and Sean was I always talked about this magical episode 50. This is episode 17. And episode 50 for me is an opportunity to look back, and I'm just looking for 1% changes. Are we a little bit better than we were the last episode and the last 50 episodes? And what I'd really like to ask for those who are willing to do it is, if you are a regular listener, please get in touch with us. Probably the best way is just DM on LinkedIn. Obviously, you can find me, Paul Rhodes, and Sean Sale. I run Green Gorilla Automation and Sean runs Just Applications. But just we're really after topics that you'd like us to discuss. We're after the listener questions have been brilliant because they help us steer kind of where we should go with the topics. And just general feedback, like if you are enjoying the episode, what we can also improve. I'm looking for those 1% incremental changes. I won't be offended if somebody says, stop Paul talking on his own for 20 minutes. I think that's perfectly valid. So it's just get in touch, steer us in our topics. We're happy to answer anything. And bizarrely or not, we do quite a lot of planning that goes into these episodes. I'll admittedly say this one is a lot more ad-lib than normal. But that's my first request is, why are we doing it? Let's make every episode count. Let's make sure there's value in there. And then I'm really a massive fan of consistency. And that's the reason I'm sat here on my own today, feeling quite lonely. Talking to a microphone is a bit of a weird, it's definitely a monologue. But the reason I've done today's episode is because I think that if we're going to do weekly habits and we're going to be consistent, we do it whatever may come. So, I know Sean's got loads to sort out. And I hope as well at the same time that there'll be a few episodes where Sean does it on his own, because it's about consistency. Because as we all know, the world and the speed of AI isn't slowing down. It's not going to stop if we, don't do an episode. So that's the kind of briefing and the segue for this episode. So, I really want to keep this new tradition alive that we started, which is a listener question. And today's comes from Sarah. So Sarah runs a local consultancy firm. And she asks, Paul, I have a massive fear of missing out around AI, but I also have a huge fear of wasting money. Every tool promises to run my business for me, but I don't trust them yet. How do I actually start breaking what currently works? So I've known Sarah for probably a decade. She's asked me not to mention her company name because she's a bit embarrassed by the question, but it was just in an honest conversation we were having. But effectively, what she's got today works. It's the reason she's still in business. It's the reason she's successful. It's the reason she's profitable. So I'm not so sure it's a fear of missing out. I think it's like she said in the second part, it's a fear of wasting money because yeah, there is a lot of promises out there. It's almost like the times of the circus comes to town with the elixir, isn't it? And the kind of promise of eternal youth for businesses. So I think it's a perfect question for today, Sarah, because what you're describing is what we've coined at GJ and obviously in the industry and stuff as a trust gap. And it's when economic fear combines with technology that threatens to automate your job, it creates like a perfect storm for anxiety. And so business owners are looking at the landscape and they're asking, well, where does the value actually exist anymore? But also that they become a bit stagnant, if that makes sense. Like they don't actually do anything. They do a lot of thinking and a lot of worrying, but they don't take any real measures. So I guess with this one, it's a bit of simple advice, really. Like, don't try and automate your entire business in 1 week. And I know we've had guests on who talk about that. You know, we've had Tina Cook, Steph Middleton Foster, we've had Peter Lowe on. They've all repeated the same thing. Don't try and automate your entire business in 1 week. You don't need to sign up to 10 different tools today. More often than not, it just comes down to the UX. Like, are you comfortable using it? Can you interact with it, you know, through voice, through text? Can you use it on your phone? I mean, they all do. But some people prefer chat because of its interface versus Google Gemini. And then what you want to do is you want to apply it to this one boring, repetitive administrative task that exists today. Even to identify that, you can have a conversation with AI. You can literally say, like, I am trying to identify one boring, repetitive administrative task in my business, and it'll ask you questions. And you have to prompt it to say, don't make decisions. Don't give me recommendations. Just keep probing me, like ask me multiple questions to get to the answer. You've got to be the driver in this. And what you'll get is to that first quick win, as I call it, and you'll see what's possible. Because as soon as you have one automation in place, and they're not difficult to do, your confidence grows and the roadmap naturally develops. So the companies that we're working with, you know, they're on a trajectory of, they're trying to build out 1 to 200 agents this year that are running loads of different single responsibility pieces of their business. So don't boil the ocean, just optimize one puddle. And speaking of the art of the possible, let's talk about the reality of coding in 2026. So there's a story that kind of got brought to me by Ollie, one of their developers, that he spotted on TechCrunch, and it's regarding Spotify. So the story is essentially that Spotify hasn't written any code since December. So it's not that they're not developing their platform. It's not that they're not adding new features. It's that the AI is doing all of the heavy lifting. And when we had a discussion internally, Ollie in my team, and obviously Kurt was on last week, kind of agreed not only with the Spotify stance, but from a GGA perspective, our company, they were kind of reflecting, go, it's probably true of us as well. So it's a huge realization for ourselves, but also, you know, Spotify are obviously a lot bigger than us, but for a company of that size to come out and talk about it. So what they did is they talked about basically this internal programming assistant or system within the business that they'd spent the time developing instead, which was called Honk. And effectively, Honk is building new features in Spotify. And it's just a fascinating article. And I think it's one that I didn't want to go too deep into the article because it's not even that long a read. I've got it open in front of me, actually. I could pick out a few key points. But effectively, they're developing unique analysis that nobody else in the industry is doing when it comes to music. And they cite things around, you know, fitness workouts in different countries have different styles of music that they work out to. So like Scandinavian is your classic metal, death metal, whereas in America, it's more likely to be hip hop and things like that. So they're doing this development, but effectively, it's all being done by AI. So it's what we've talked about for the last 16 episodes, which is the human is the architect in the loop. You know, that's where the human sits, the 10-80-10 rule of you're kind of the planner and the architect. The AI does the 80% of the heavy lifting, and then the human is ultimately responsible for the output. That's the thing that people are getting wrong, is that you're responsible for reviewing. So yeah, it's a fascinating article. I'll put it in the show notes. But the other thing they allude to, which I was going to segue into, is just their kind of, they allow AI music now onto Spotify, which they have done for a while. And the kind of get out of jail card, I guess, for them is, as long as it says in the song's metadata that it's AI generated, it's allowed on the platform. I was thinking about this on my run, to be honest. I was listening to a Spotify playlist called Another Boring Punk Run. And about 10 years, 11 years ago, I used to be able to run for quite a long time. I can't now. But it was these songs from like probably 10, 20 years ago. Some of them really old, and they're all punk songs, and they're all kind of US artists and stuff. I've played in bands. I've played guitar since I was probably about 12. I've played in bands. I've played in gigs, dive bars. I've really enjoyed playing in the punk scene, and then as of COVID, I've been learning the drums, although I'm nowhere near good enough to play punk. I play it on half speed, but yeah, it's another huge part of life, isn't it? Where we've touched on it in the past, I think, really, where we talked about human generated music and AI generated music, and ultimately music's about a feeling, isn't it? It's about connection. But yeah, I don't have an answer to it. I just thought, wow, like it's the difficulty is you won't be able to tell the difference. That's again, and do you need to know the difference is another much broader question. So I think we're getting into philosophy and psychology here, and I don't want to get into that. So I think after that conversation on Spotify and music, I think the thing is, we've talked about in the previous episodes about tools like Replit and agentic AI, moving developers from manually typing out boilerplate code. The junior developer role is evolving into the AI architect. The AI drafts the base work. It's fast and it's cheap, and the human steps in to review, refine, and add context. It's just a massive shift, isn't it, from creation to curation? And it's the same with music. And if Spotify is doing it at the enterprise level, then small businesses really need to realize it's accessible to them too. So now what I want to do is, I've said this will be a short episode, and I can feel myself talking and talking. So I know what you're thinking, Paul. I don't run a software business like Spotify or GJ, or I run a traditional business. So let's use the analogy and break this down and look at like a landscaping business. So the context for this is, and I was trying to bring it back to Sarah's question earlier, is I was on a networking online thing in the week, and I do my kind of usual AI pulse, and there was a landscaping business on there, and they asked a really, really good question. They were like, very much like Sarah, but inquisitive, and like, how does that apply to my landscaping business? And I feel like it was such a good question, because the mistake that I see people making, where they have something that is manually, the service that they deliver is manual, don't think AI is not for you. So I kind of was talking around the fact that, I don't believe that in 2026 AI is going to come in some sort of robotic form and cut your garden for you at mass scale. We're not there yet. But what I think instead is, a landscaping business has the same departments as most other businesses. So they'll have a sales department, they'll have a marketing department. It might just be one person, but the functions exist in every business, don't they? Administration, HR, operations, and AI has the ability to touch every single one of those. And when you automate out the mundane, suddenly the human is free to do the work that you never got round to. So when we looked at this and we were having a conversation just for a couple of minutes on the networking thing, I was saying, okay, so his question was, will AI do the gardening for me? The answer is no. It's not going to physically lay your patio or mow your lawn or dig out a beehive. The boots on the ground human element, is essential. But that doesn't mean that AI is useless to the landscaping business, because they still have back office. So how they quote, how quickly they quote, how accurate their estimates are based on like fluctuating costs of their raw materials. So again, we revisit the 10-80-10 rule. If you haven't listened to episode 15, it's a good one in my opinion. So the first 10% we talked about, the landscaper goes to the site, speaks to the client, sets the vision, has the human connection. That's the human strategy. The middle 80% is where the AI takes, rough voice notes and dictations, and it instantly calculates material costs, formats a, professional branded proposal, and emails it to the client in 5 minutes instead of 3 days. So The final 10% is a landscaper reviews that quote to make sure it's accurate, signs it off, and then obviously they actually go on and do the job and the thingy. But we just looked at one scenario where time to quote would exponentially increase the number of clients that he could service. And we talked about, well, why not think like the fact that you sit in the car after the visit, because they're all on-site visits. You sit in the car and you spend 30 seconds just, uploading via Claude, or, there's loads of AI dictation, or you even sit there and use Whisperflow and you just dictate out of your head exactly what they've said, but you get it out of your head and out of your paper. You put it into a digital format, and it can be voice, and then a series of agents kick it off. And by the time you're back home, there's a potential that the quote has been received and accepted. And that's the way to think about AI. It's doing the things that we all know that if we did these strategies and initiatives, it would be a game changer for our businesses. So every business owner, whether you're a landscaper, consultant, or a plumber, you need to find that one back office process to automate. I think that's absolutely essential. And so I think that brings us to the end of episode 17. It's intended to be a short, sharp look at the bridging the trust gap. So your homework for this week is simple. Stop worrying about the robots taking over the world and find that one back office process you can optimize. Be the landscaper who quotes faster than the competition. Thank you so much for everyone for listening and for continuing to support the podcast while Sean's away. Keep sending your questions in via our LinkedIn pages, or you can email me, paul@ggapps.co.uk, and we'll feature them on the show just like we've done for Rob, Sarah, and previous questions that we've had in. Hopefully I'll have my co-host back in the chair next week. And until then, thank you for listening to Control Alt Dev.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.